Hello once again. This requires white to checkmate in 3 moves. The initial impression here is that, rather unusually, black can move his king to 1 square, namely f4. And this needs to be borne in mind. In my view, it's far easier when the opposing king is unable to make any legal move, but that's just a personal opinion. That said, it occurred to me almost immediately that a good idea lies in the line bishop e3. So let's just take a quick look at this. Bishop e3. What are we trying to do here? Well, first of all, it's discovered check on the king. Now, this is a forced move. King takes e4. And then we play here. Yeah, we're cutting out the bishop, but that's just incidental. What are we really threatening here with this? Well, if it were white's move, he'd just play here, and that would be checkmate. But unfortunately, it's not white's move, it's black's. Can you see how black scuppers white here? Well done to anyone who's seen it. Black simply plays here. And what he's doing is, when white plays here, he has a flight square, and so there is no mate in 3. So let's just put this back to the starting position. It's a good idea, and it is relevant, believe me, it is. So that's the starting lineup. Just make sure that it's correct. Yes, it is. Okay. And so, as is becoming a theme in 1 or 2 of these studies, how does white manage to play the strategy that I have just described and not permit black an escape route? Well, the key is by no means obvious. Can you see it? Pause now to have a look at it. Okay, now that we're back with this, the key move, and this is the only move to win in 3 moves. It's rook d1. Now, not many would find it. It would probably take a Magnus Carlsen or a Stockfish or someone similar to them. How I found it, well, I gave myself enough time, as I'll explain later on. Over the board, it would be very difficult to find this, but I'm very pleased that I found all the variations. I've checked the solution, and it's 100% the same as mine. So I wanted to be quite right on this one, as I do on all of them, in fact. But this is a very complicated one, and you need to get it right. So, like I said, this is the only move to achieve the foregoing objective, and they are essentially 7 replies. So let's go through them. Line A is king f4. This is what I mentioned earlier. This is the flight square, right? So what do we do here? Well, what we do is we play what I suggested would be the first move, but in fact it's the second move, bishop e3 check. So king takes e4 is forced. Can you see the winning move? Good for you if you did. Bishop c1 is checkmate. And now it becomes abundantly clear why we played rook d1 on the first move, so as to create an opening for the white bishop on c1, as opposed to g5 when we pushed the pawn onto g6, which just didn't work. So that gets around that problem. So we'll just put this back. We'll leave our rook on d1. There's no need to move that anywhere. Right, so we've looked at king f4, bishop e3, king e4, bishop c1. Let's look now at bishop takes e5, or indeed if the bishop moves anywhere else, but this highlights the situation pretty well, I think. So what do we do here? This needs somewhat different treatment to the line in A. This is variation B, the second one. Note here, incidentally, that bishop e3 fails to bishop d5. The bishop is in the way. Just watch a little moment or two later and you'll see what I mean by that. By playing bishop e3, black replies bishop d5. He's now covering his bishop here, so white can't take it. He's also threatening to take this pawn and escape. That's why bishop e3 doesn't work. So just go back for a moment. We've played rook d1, black has played bishop e5. So what do we do instead of bishop e3 here? Like I said, it needs different treatment. Well, again, well done to anyone who's found it. It's bishop f2, discovered check. And this is what I was meaning just a moment ago. The bishop is pinned. If we'd played bishop e3, the bishop wouldn't be pinned, and that's why it can go to d5. Now it cannot go to d5. So black is forced. He can't take this because it's covered by the rook. All the squares are covered except his initial flight square. Now, what do? Well, now we do play bishop e3. Isn't that an amazing turn of events? And all avenues are stopped from black's point of view. He is checkmated. That is really instructive there, and I'd advise anyone take a very close look at that variation B because it is very instructive indeed. Right, we'll go back to the rook d1 situation for variation C. Okay, that's the original position having played rook d1. So we've looked at king f4, variation A. We've looked at bishop e5, variation B. Variation C is a1 equals queen. So how do we deal with this? Well, this is not a problem at all because, like with variation A, we simply play here. And he has to play king takes e4 because there's the discovered check. He can't interpose anything. And then we simply play bishop c1, like I say, as opposed to bishop g5. It gets around that problem rather nicely, and that is checkmate. So that's variation C. So that doesn't work. So again, after rook d1, we are now at variation D. It's f1 equals queen. So what do we do here? Now we have to be especially careful with this variation. It is not easy to see. If you try bishop e3, it will not work. Try it for yourselves, but it won't. But what does work here this is here, by the way. Just so that we have this absolutely right. That's the starting lineup. Okay, we played rook d1. f1 queen this time. Yep. Can you see the reply to that white's second move? Not bishop e3. Well, in fact, it's bishop g1. Yeah, that is the only move that will do it here. Discovered check. So what does black do? Well, he has the forced move of there. Can you see the winning move? Yes, that's why we had to go to g1. Rook f1 is checkmate. It's a glorious line, is it not? Take a look at that. So that's variation D. Let's take a look at variation E, the fifth one. Right. Yeah, we've just played rook d1. So we've looked at king f4, bishop e5, a1 queen, f1 queen. Let's take a look at the knight moves. knight to d4, what do we do here? Or knight a7, incidentally. It works the same way. Well, there are two variations here. We play bishop takes d4, check. And the two replies, he can go here, king f4, and then it's queen e5 mate. Or if he prefers, he can take this pawn. And then we play here. That's a glorious line as well. And that is checkmate, covering the e7 square. Isn't that nice? Okay, there are two more variations. They're both with the knight. Yep, so rook d1, we've looked at knight d4, like I say, equally knight a7, it's the same result. So let's just have a look here. What about if we do this? What does white do then? Right, well this is a bit different as well. It's bishop takes b5, discovered check. Now king f4 is forced. The pawn, of course, is covered. Everywhere else is covered. And then finally, congrats if you've seen it. Not on e3, not on c1, but on d2 this time. Isn't that amazing? So one final variation. It's again with the black knight. That's the starting lineup. And this is variation G, the seventh one. So after rook d1, what happens if he plays knight e7? You have to be a bit careful on this one. Can you see it? Okay, well, it is still bishop d4. And again, if he plays king f4, it's queen e5 mate. But if he takes the pawn, this time you can't afford to play that because he can interpose. So what do you play instead? Well, you have two choices. You can either play here, and that is checkmate, queen covers the bishop, or you can play e5, and that is checkmate as well because the queen covers the pawn and all the other squares are covered. Now, I have to confess, it took me the better part of a couple of hours during which I was back and forth to it before finally cracking the code. Variation D, the one with f1 equals queen, bishop g1, king f4, rook f1 mate, in my opinion is the most difficult. But I was glad to solve it and bring it to you, and I hope you liked it. And goodbye for now.